Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to another book review. And yes, just let's get started. So, in A Mirror for the Blind, Jeong turns Seoul into a brutal pricing machine. Blind dates act as balance sheet interviews. Office has that gamify status, and online influencers who sell financial salvation to the desperate. So think Hell Choson meets Adam Curtis's hyper-normalization. So this is a soul where everyone knows the official story is false, but the system is easier to live in than to escape. So I'll try and show how this novel makes status, screens, and survival feel terrifyingly normal. So, in the 21st century, Seoul became one of the most connected cities in the world. Everyone had a smartphone, everyone was online, and everyone believed that through hard work, beauty, and ambition, they could climb the ladder of success. But underneath, people knew this wasn't true. They called it Hell Choson, a society where your postcode, your parents' wealth, and your university mattered more than talent. And mattered more than talent, where a blind date wasn't about love, but an interview for marriage with questions about salary, savings, and family debt. And yet people kept playing the game, even as they admitted the game was rigged. So, this is what Adam Curtis describes in his documentary, Hyper-Normalization. Everyone knows the official story is false, but no one can imagine an alternative. So the illusion becomes reality. In Seoul, this illusion was broadcast through glowing screens. On Instagram, people live lives of Gangnam apartments, designer handbags, and perfect weekends. On anonymous company chat boards, workers judged each other by the prestige of their employers and the cars they drove. The screens reflected back their ambitions and their fears until the reflection became almost indistinguishable from the people themselves. Young Koreans knew it was making them miserable. The collapsing birth rate, the epidemics of stress, suicide, and exhaustion showed that quite clearly. But the system was too powerful, too normalized for anyone to step outside of it. So they scrolled and compared and hustled, searching for freedom in the same screens that had trapped them. Because, as always, it was easier to imagine the end of your own happiness than the end of the system itself. So, hello, I'm Barry. This is Soul Book Club, and today I'm reviewing A Mirror for the Blind. A Mirror for the Blind, Reflections of a Digital Soul by Mu Jeong. And this was his debut novel. It was translated by Mark Allen Brazil, and it was published in 2023. And Chong's background is an interesting one. So he originally studied physics and then moved into computer science and worked in both a German engineering firm and then the Korean automobile industry before he turned to writing. And he entered writing because there was an essay competition at work. He entered this essay competition and his essay won. And this sort of he says this sort of sparked his love for writing and storytelling. And A Mirror for the Blind is his debut novel, is the result of winning this competition. And the novel drops us into the world of young white collar workers in Seoul. And so for these young guys, life is a constant rat race of resumes, blind dates, housing prices, and speculative investments. And the characters are very sharply drawn. So there's several different characters that we encounter. The main character is there's three young guys, but the main character is Kim Young Baek, and he's an elite graduate. He went to one of the good universities, and he's trying to sort of pull himself back from the brink. Right? He's sort of upwardly aspirational, and he doesn't want to fall down the ladder. He wants to keep climbing. And then we also have one of his colleagues, Jeong, and Jeong is a younger guy, and he's a rookie. He's just entered this quite prestigious company that Young Baek works at, and he's also obsessed with catching sort of investment opportunities. He's sort of desperately watching the stock market and crypto and things like this, trying to catch these opportunities before they slip away, slip through his fingers. We also meet Youngbaek's girlfriend, or his fiance of 10 years, Jeong, and technically they've been planning their marriage, but Jeong is painfully aware of the difference in their status. And then we also, another character who's quite significant, you kind of don't meet him in a way. The other characters just watch him, is a guy called Val Yu, who is a kind of a YouTube style, sort of self described poverty kind of, what would you say, like an influencer, a wealth therapist, someone who sort of preaches this gospel of investing hustle. You've got to keep your eye on these investments and embrace day trading and all this kind of thing. And so through these characters and a few more, Chongmu captures the reality of contemporary Korea. Does a very, very good job. This novel really does capture, it sort of captures the zeitgeist of modern Korea, and so much of this just felt familiar to me. I'm very aware of a lot of these things. And this is modern Korea, modern Seoul. This is as depicted by Chongmu. This is a place where even a casual blind date feels like a job interview. Where the person you're meeting for this first date, they might ask, "What's your salary? Do you own a car? How much do you have in your savings? What's your postcode? Which part of town do you live in?" And the novel does a really fantastic job of showing how this sort of spirit of competition just bleeds into every area of life. So from careers to romance to social media, obviously. And we just through the course of the novel, we just see the core trio of characters and the people around them just constantly comparing themselves to others while staring into their phones. So anyway, so the novel was quite. The novel wasn't as the novel has been quite popular as far as I can tell, and you will see people praising this. There's a lot of good reviews on social media, ironically, for this novel, and it got a really good review in Kirkus. Actually, Kirkus said it was a moving and meditative account of the crushing demands of Korean careerism. Oh God, it's so hot in here. I'm so sorry. But yeah, so it's very, very sharp. I think it's a fantastic portrait of this generation, and their ambition, the pressure that they're under, and just this search for meaning in one of the most fast-paced cities in the world. And there's an interesting essay at the beginning, or a sort of foreword, that Chongmu writes. And he says that the inspiration for this novel came from his own experiences of moving through this sort of online Korean world. And as a student, he remembers the pride of logging into a university-only social network with his brand new, with his shiny new student ID. And he says that this felt like belonging to an exclusive in-group. You know what? I'm going to check my phone quickly because I'm worried the audio is not working, and this might be quite a long review. So I don't want to. Oh, okay, fantastic. Okay, but anyway, and he says the excitement of this quickly soured because these message boards were just filled with cynicism and people complaining and people boasting about their achievements, or their, trying to display their status, and arguing and competing about which schools were better and which sort of job opportunities were better. And later, he joined a big corporation, which is obviously the goal for lots of people, to join a good corporation, a big company. But he says when he did that, the same cycle repeated. So he was excited to get into the big company. But this time, lots of the companies, they have these anonymous online communities where their office workers can sort of post and talk, and you can kind of say things that you can't say publicly, right? Because it's anonymous. So you can complain about the boss or the department or other things. And but again, this he realized again that this is not just the same as the previous sort of online environments that he'd been in, and it's really it's not just about where you studied now or even where you work, how good the company is, how big the company is. It's about how much you earn, where you live, the type of person you might be able to get on the marriage market, and what kind of assets that you hold or are pursuing. And so Chong starts. He says he starts to think that adulthood just began to look like a long continuation of school. From report cards to performance reports, from grades to salaries, from dating specs to marriage negotiations. And he says that online, people presented themselves like a cheap gold leaf, polishing an image of how they imagined the top 5% lived, while quietly fearing they might be exposed. When I was editing this script, this made me think of a couple of weeks ago. My wife and I went to a fancy restaurant, and I had a T-bone steak. I'd never had a T-bone steak before, and of course, I took a photo of the steak and posted it on my social media. I thought, why am I doing this? I don't, who cares, right? Anyway, very very amusing. And anyway, those people who can't keep up, can't keep up with the fancy pants Soulites, the other people around them, they feel deprived. And the people who are doing a good job of pretending or displaying or making it look like they do belong, that a lot of those people, they live in fear of being unmasked and it being revealed that they're living beyond their means, or they're not really as successful or as wealthy as they're pretending to be. And anyway, so with this novel, he says that he wanted to expose this live like them culture, and this is the competitive need to keep up with these sort of glossy and unrealistic standards that foster insecurity rather than genuine connection. And I'm sure at this point we're all very familiar with this concept. But he also writes about longing for something gentler, just the quiet sweetness of a calm and relaxed everyday life, where, a breath of wind blows across your face in the park, just these little moments where we can simply just be without constant comparison. And at its heart, A Mirror for the Blind is about young office workers in Seoul who are trying to make their life in this extremely competitive city. And so they're juggling their careers, their housing, their relationships, and their social media, constantly comparing themselves to everyone else. But what makes it powerful is that it's not, he doesn't show this in some abstract way, but just through everyday situations. So the blind dates that feel like job interviews, through these anonymous office chat boards, through late night scrolling on phones, which is something I have a very bad habit for. I'm struggling with that at the moment. And it's a very human story about people in the kind of people who are in Seoul now, and many of whom might seem like they're outwardly successful, but inwardly they're just deeply exhausted. So anyway, I finished this book a few weeks ago, and I've just been obsessed with it ever since. So this video might be a bit longer than other videos. That's if I don't just faint from the heat in this room. But yeah, I have been obsessed with this because it just seems like it gets so many things right, and it gives a very good depiction of contemporary Korean society. So I teach at a university, and a lot of my students, obviously, they're entering this world, right? It's when they graduate, they're going off to join the rat race and to try and get into one of these companies. So I'm very aware of that side of the equation presented in this novel. And at the same time, I also do some tutoring in some big companies. I won't name the companies, right? But I kind of see some of the internal working of these big companies. And the novel also does a very good job of talking about that sort of office culture and the people that work in these big companies. And I just think it gets a lot of things right. If you're interested in contemporary Korea, this is really a good novel to sort of show you what's going on. So let me just get started. So I'm sorry, it really is. It's just ridiculously hot here. Okay, so we meet assistant manager Kim Yong-baek. And Young-baek is 32 years old, and the novel starts with him commuting. So he's on commuting to Seoul. Sorry, he's in Seoul, and he's commuting from his home area to Gangnam. Right, he works at a company in Gangnam, and it very quickly seems like his daily life is measured in tiny wins. Like he manages to squeeze into the overcrowded elevator just before the doors close. Oh, and that's a win for Young-baek. Or he manages to slip through the bus door just in time, or catches the bus just in time. It's another tiny win. And he keeps saying this thing, just a moment. And it's almost like he's asking this city to wait for him. Just give me a moment. Let me catch up. And so he's harassed and he's harried. And this is how he is at the beginning of the novel. And this is his daily life. And when he's on the bus, he is essentially doom scrolling. He's sort of scrolling through his social media feed, and in particular through an app called Screen, SCR33N, and this is a fictional app, and it's the anonymous app for office workers that he's a member of. And so, of course, this app is filled with confessions about money, about dating, and about status in general. And this morning in particular, he's extremely upset. He's devastated because he'd purchased this stock that had been hyped up. And as he's scrolling his phone, he realizes it's sunk. It's gone down in value from the 85th floor, which is this expression which means that it was high. It was worth a lot of money, but it's collapsed. It's just gone down. It's only worth $50 now. And he thinks, oh, even if it climbs again, he knows it'll never be enough to buy a home in Seoul. And so that's what he's thinking as he starts his day at work, right? And then at nighttime, this opening section of the novel is just trying to give you a sense of what his daily life is like, right? And it gives you a good sense of what the daily grind is like for the average office worker at a decent company in Seoul, right? So at night, he's finished his day at work. At nighttime, he goes on the treadmill and he posts a selfie of himself on the treadmill. So he's just sort of chasing a little social validation. And then he's just scrolling, his algorithm is suggesting things to him. And most of the things that the videos are suggesting is this sort of financial investing kind of culture, right? A sort of hustle culture. And one of the channels, or one of the videos that he gets recommended, is this channel by a guy called Val Yu. And Val Yu happens to be a former sort of senior member of staff at Young-baek's company. And he made some money. I can't remember if he made money on crypto or just investing. I think it was just investing. And he quit his job, which is obviously the dream for a lot of these people. And he has reinvented himself as this sort of influencer, a finance influencer, a sort of investment influencer who he has over 1 million followers, and he's sort of he's telling people how to get rich, right? If you follow me, if you do what I do, you can make a lot of money on the stock market. And then we see the next morning, it starts all over again. The alarm goes off, the daily commute. He's slipping into his worn shoes, which aren't designer, and getting his morning cup of coffee. And then when he gets to the office, there's a junior, and this is Chong-woo, who's important for the story. He asks, amusingly, a forbidden question. He says to Young-baek, he says, do you enjoy what you do? And Young-baek can't believe that he's asked this. He thinks, oh my gosh, poor Chong-woo. The world is going to slap you in the face. You're so naive. And anyway, and his day just from there, his day just is just a sort of sequence of meetings and answering emails and just a sort of tedious daily work, performance reviews, scrolling through his phone, the sound of notifications coming in. And then in the evening, and sorry, I know I'm going into quite a bit of detail. I'll start skipping some, but it's all good stuff and it's interesting. So in that evening, he meets two old school friends for dinner. So Dongju didn't get into one of the really prestigious universities, right? And that's always been like this has always annoyed him, right? He's always felt inferior because he didn't get into one of the really good universities. But he is now a very highly paid programmer. And so Dongju's there, and then their other friend In Young, and In Young has a job as a civil servant, and historically these jobs have been very highly coveted, right? Because they have a pension, they're very secure. That might be have been changing a bit in recent years, but anyway, In Young has a sort of very highly coveted job as a civil servant. Dongju's making a ton of cash as a programmer, and Yongbek works for a P company, and he did go to one of the prestigious universities. And so anyway, over drinks and barbecue or something, they are just catching up. But really, it's an opportunity where they sort of compare their lives and their salaries and their sort of current status, and they're kind of joking, but they also they are genuinely comparing themselves to each other, and they feel, they kind of envy each other for different things, right? And Young Beck is joking, maybe he should just learn to code. If he wants to make more money, maybe he should just learn to code and make a lot of money like In Young. And anyway, what makes this opening of the novel so sharp is how it turns all of these little frictions of daily Seoul life, trying to, jump in the elevator, the missing the bus, queuing for the coffee, the endless notifications, into just a kind of this sort of constant frustration, or like you're constantly fighting to sort of get ahead, and like tiny delays, like the time on the clock, you're sort of chasing the clock, or you're watching the price of a stock you've invested in, or you're checking to see how many likes that photo you posted got. And this all sort of shapes how these people feel about themselves, right? And then also, what it does a good job of is this idea of Seoul's geography, and the digital infrastructure just kind of frames every aspect of their life, right? So it's a city where life is just constantly measured, compared, and gamified, right, in a bunch of different ways. So even when he's meeting his friends for dinner, and these are like childhood friends, they've been friends for years and years, it feels like they're competing, right? It's like they're sort of checking the scoreboard, who's earning more, who's more secure in their job, who's ahead, romantically or something. And Youngbaek is joking when he says, maybe I should just learn to code. But he kind of keeps repeating this to himself, and it sort of hints at this deeper desperation that he's not and maybe not voicing, right? And it sort of hints at this idea that there is a promise of upward mobility, that, and people are all chasing it, but kind of no one really believes in it, right? People, you're all chasing after, but everybody knows it's kind of impossible. And then there's one of the subsequent chapters is called "Should I Just Learn to Code?" And this initially, it starts by going back to Yongbek when he was in a cram school, and we see a math teacher humiliating him at the blackboard because he focuses on doing this sort of very clever method instead of just getting the answer, right? Because in the cram school, only the result matters, right? The teacher isn't impressed that he can do this sort of fancy calculation. It doesn't matter. And so you see that this is just the atmosphere of the cram school. And it's this fictional brand called Elegant Math. And, so there's Elegant Math is sort of, the branding is all over the place. The homeroom teachers are like pressuring kids to abandon philosophy. Why do you want to study philosophy? You want to study medicine. What are you being so silly for? And all the students are all chattering about the top universities that they want to get into, right? And it's this little image of how these test scores just completely dominate, can completely dominate childhood, right? Like it's the only thing that's important. And then it flashes forward, and again, Dongju is telling the sort of hotshot programmer guy, he's saying, yeah, it's all about skills these days, not like credentials. You just need the good skills. If you're a good programmer, you'll be successful. And poor Youngbaek, when he gets home, he sort of types into his phone how to be a programmer. and he sort of starts looking at tutorials, but he realizes this is ridiculous, right? He knows that he's 32 years old. He's not going to reinvent himself. He's a cog in the machine at this company at P Corp, and he's just sort of too exhausted to um to reinvent himself. When is he going to learn to code? When is he going to learn to be a programmer? Just doesn't seem realistic. And then we get the strand. We get a snapshot or of what In Young's daily life is like as a civil servant, and his friends are jealous of him because being a civil servant, this is a very coveted position, right? And he celebrates like his payday by posting on social media, whoa, look at me, how great I am. And then he buys rice cakes for everybody at the office, and he's trying to suck up to the people at the office. He's like the new beginner, the person who's just started working there. And anyway, and someone comes in to the civil to the I guess it's like the local neighborhood office, right? And they want help with like an energy voucher, and In Young doesn't know how to work the computer system, right? And so his manager sort of says, "How come you don't know how to do this? You should know how to do this." And then he starts sort of complaining. In Young hears him complaining on the phone to someone about how lazy and incompetent Gen Z are, and he just got some sort of really menial tasks kind of dumped on him. And as he's going home on the subway, he sees all of these sort of glossy ads for elegant employment. This elegant is kind of a fake brand in the novel. And he's like thinking of, oh, wow, I wish I could get a better job, right? And although he has a civil servant job, the pay isn't very good. And he's just in agony looking at his bank balance when his rent comes out. And then he also has to put up with his mother, who's sort of pressuring him to get married. Shouldn't you already be married by now? And then he goes on a blind date. And this is absolutely a brutal scene. He gets dressed and he does his hair and he puts on nice clothes and he's hopeful. And as he goes there, he's like rehearsing in his mind this this script of like the typical questions and things that you have to talk about. And as soon as he gets there, this girl, there's this woman that he's meeting, she just immediately sort of starts interrogating him. Like, do you own a car? Are you leasing or purchasing? Which district do you live in? And the date just collapses very quickly. And she's like, is this how people like you act? And she means people like you that don't have much money. You're just wasting people's like me time by even going on these blind dates. And it's just a brutal scene. And of course, he's extremely disheartened. And then the next section of the novel, throughout this whole sort of first half of the novel, we see that it's not just the bosses that are causing the problems here. It's not just that you've got a bad boss who's mean to you, or the bureaucracy of the system, although these things are problems. It's the whole ecosystem is playing a part here. So we've got all the advertising and the algorithms are feeding people their kind of lines in this script, right? And you've got your sort of bank balance, and the person that you might go on a blind date with are sort of handing down their judgment on you. And the title of one of the chapters is The Bridle. And as this suggests, it isn't only about the bosses and the bureaucrats tugging the reins. It's the entire structure of a modern soul life that sort of ties ambition to debt and demographics. And, you're just, the whole system is against you. And it's as if Seoul itself has become a kind of a game board. So where geography and these digital systems just push people to constantly measure and sort of measure themselves, compare themselves with each other, and just sort of display how well they perform in different areas or different aspects of their life. And then we have another thread following Dongju. So Dongju is he's desperate to get into M Corp, and he is these days, to get into one of the big companies, the sort of interview process and the application process, there's so many steps. There might be like 3 or 4 rounds of interviews, and there might be a test, and there might be an AI interview these days. It just sounds like an absolute nightmare. And he wants to get into M Corp. and he passes the online competency test, and he hasn't even got a job or got to the past the next round, but he starts fantasizing about the prestige of having a fancy business card, and sort of being able to kind of flex in group chats. Look at me, I'm a member of M Corp now. But we also see a flashback to the sort of grind that he had to go through to get him there. And so he has an issue. He has this envy at his friends that went to the more prestigious universities, because he didn't get into a prestigious university because he made a mistake. He thinks he made like one stupid mistake on the entrance exam at the end of high school, like the big exam at the end of high school. He thinks he made like a tiny mistake with a minus sign, and this has haunted him ever since. And he begs his parents for more, that he wants to take another year and spend another year at cram schools and then retake this exam again. And then eventually he gets into a sort of government coding program, and does well as a programmer. But he still wants to get into one of these big corporations because it's so prestigious. And then we see inside one of these companies themselves, right? And we see the effect that day trading has on the employees, right? And so we see how the bathroom stalls are usually just full of people who are surreptitiously trading on their phones, right? So you've not meant to be trading during your working hours in the office, right? But of course, lots of people want to do it, so they have to sneak off to the cubicle in the toilet, and do their trading. And a lot of these people, they're all watching the same videos by this finance guru guy, this value guy, and they're all sort of trying to follow him and get rich like him. And so the management of the company sends around this memo, saying, don't, you've not meant to do this during work hours. But of course, everyone just keeps doing it. And then as we move on, the humiliations the characters experience just keep piling up. So we have humiliation at the date, going for the date. We've got this exam humiliation of the missing the minus sign. We've got all this sort of speculation, sort of the day trading that's going on. And it's like their personal worth always has a price on it, whether it's by sort of potential lovers or wives sizing them up, the HR department ranking their resume, or just the market that's tracking your investments. And around all of this is just this sort of constant drip of corporate memos in the background, right? This insistent pool of this corporate nonsense that you've got to pay attention to, the constant emails and meetings, and just all this kind of rubbish, right? And then what keeps people moving on this treadmill are these sort of private fantasies, imagining the fancy business card with your name on it. But really, what would change if he gets that? Or the engagement ring photo? It's not even the getting married that they're looking forward to. It's being able to post the fancy engagement ring, which shows, look, I made it, I did it, I got married with a fancy engagement ring, and all that kind of thing. And then, okay, yeah, so right, yeah, so and then there's another so this is fantastic, right? So it's the day trading is very amusing, and those scenes with people sort of rushing down to the toilet, right? It's kind of sad, but it's very amusing, right? And then there's another extremely amusing scene which will be very familiar to people. I shouldn't say amusing, right? Sort of black, maybe darkly humorous, I guess. But it's the hueshik, right? The company dinner, right? Where the youngest member of staff, so that's Jeong, who's the newbie, he has to pour drinks and sort of play host to the older members of staff. And so and here we also have, so Youngbaek and Ji-young are also there, and they're talking about stocks and housing and marriage, and they're hazing the new guy, they're hazing Chong-woo. And then, but no one wants to be there at these meetings, right? And so they slip out as soon as they can, and they say to each other, "Yeah, look back, don't look back. Look back once, and you're stuck in hell forever." And and then again, as they leave, they're talking about value, and they're worried about marriage and all these kind of things, right? And basically, they're still commiserating that with each other, that the system just never really lets you go, right? Okay, so and yeah, so but another thing that's interesting about Chongwoo, right? So they're all hazing Chongwoo. They think Chongwoo's just, oh, he's just the newbie, right? But it turns out Chongwoo upends the hierarchy a little bit because he reveals he's a wealthy prop kid. Prop kid is a property kid, and he's from Gangnam. He actually lives in Gangnam. And Youngbek is deflated. He can't believe that the newbie, this young kid, actually lives in Gangnam. And he's extremely jealous that he lives in this sort of upper, the sort of fancy part of Seoul. And yeah, right. Okay. So what else do I want to say about that? Yeah. So okay. And so then we also have another extremely painful extremely painful scene. So Chongwoo is trying to find a girlfriend, right? And so he agonizes over his, sort of making a self introduction to post on the screen app, right? And so he takes his time and he makes this nice, introduction, and he just gets absolutely roasted by everybody on this app, and they're making fun of him for his height, and they're saying, give up, dude, no one's going to be interested. And I was as a short man myself, I was personally deeply offended on his behalf. And yeah, anyway. And okay, yeah, and then yeah, and then Youngbek's fiance is under pressure from her mother. To Her mother and her friends are saying that Youngbek isn't in the same class as you. You might have been together 10 years, but you have a much better career than he does. So it's ridiculous that you're even thinking about marrying him, right? And so she dumps him, right? And he's devastated, and it's so cold the way she does it. Again, really just brutal. And it's like 10 years are just down the toilet in like a couple of minutes, and she's gone. And Youngbek goes and gets drunk, and again, he gets really just sort of blackout drunk. And it's a disaster. He gets a terrible hangover, he messes up at work, and it's a disaster, right? um and yeah, it's awful. And then where else are we? Okay, what else do I want to see? So towards the end, I'm going to try and skip some stuff because I've been talking too much already. Okay, so yeah, he kind of he gets really drunk. He takes some time off work, and he needs to take a break. Right, he's kind of burned out, so he goes to a temple stay for a few days. And the monk takes his phone away from him, and he goes for a hike. And he notices how different the world feels when you're not being sort of when you're not performing your life for your feed. But of course, reality pulls him back. He has to go back to work at the company. He learns Chongwoo has been in a crash, and he learns he learns that Chongwoo might not have been representing himself really. And we find out that Value might also not have been representing himself honestly. And there's kind of some interesting developments there. And the novel kind of closes on a loop. So there's not a clean resolution. There's Youngbek, it ends with Youngbek opening an old diary, and he draws the shape of a blackened screen phone, like a smartphone screen, writes the names of his friends in it, and then sort of blurs them out in a blob of ink, a square of ink. And so the rectangle is the phone, it's the mirror, it's the feed, and it's just all the ways that their identities and lives have just been flattened together. And it's kind of a bleak ending, really. So there's no escape here. He does get this off-grid moment where he gets to experience life without metrics or judgment, and he gets a little glimpse of what defining yourself might mean. But as soon as he's back in the city, it's ads, it's messages from his bank, it's the social media platforms just sort of reasserting their grip. And the last image is quite stark, really. It says, "The sun will keep rising, and I'll still be standing with my head bowed over my phone. And it's an ending that completes the circle. It shows that freedom exists only in fleeting cracks, right? While the machinery of modern Seoul just keeps turning. And what Mujong shows us at the level of the characters and scenes, in the elevators and the toilet cubicles, the blind dates, in the offices and the staff, the meeting rooms and all this kind of thing, and the barbecue restaurants, is exactly what Korean commentators have been writing about for years in broader social terms. And so, to really see how these sort of micro struggles fit into the bigger picture, it's helpful to sort of connect the novel to the language of Hell Choson and the spoon class hierarchy, and just the despair of the so-called seven give up generation. And in fact, I'm going to talk about their 2016 Korea Economic Institute article, which talked about these things in stark detail, and it's very interesting to compare this with the novel. So just hold on one second. Just hold on 1 second there. Let me check. Let me check something. How long we've been going? 40 minutes. Oh my gosh. Okay, hold on a second. And okay, so okay. Okay, I'm gonna melt. I'm absolutely gonna melt. Okay. All right. So anyway, let's keep going. All right. So back in the mid 2000s and ever since, Hell Choson has been very a much discussed topic, right? Also, this idea of the spoon class system, which I'll get to a bit more in a minute. So we have these overschooled and underemployed young people in Korea, and this sense of being trapped in a rigged game. And I'll post a link to this Korea Economic Institute of America article, and it highlights how young South Korean people, young adults, have begun to embrace this sort of self-deprecating terms like hell choson and dirt spoon as kind of poignant and ironic critiques of the very real and bleak economic realities that many are facing, right? So these expressions, hell choson, dirt spoon, they capture the frustrations of many young people who are very well educated, but because the job market is so fiercely competitive, it's still a very difficult, even if you're well educated, it's still extremely challenging. And the job market is dominated by the big chaebol companies. They also have these rising living costs and at the same time shrinking opportunities. And the spoon class theory further divides society into gold and silver and dirt spoons, right? And the idea is essentially that your economic, your sort of socio-economic mobility is essentially preconditioned by birth, right? You're born a gold spoon, a silver spoon, or a dirt spoon. And oh, excuse me. And these labels aren't empowering, but they just reflect this sort of deep pessimism, and this sort of very profound alienation, and they kind of hint that self-defeat has become a kind of cultural coping mechanism, and maybe also at the same time a warning sign about the eroding hope of lots of young people. And we see in Chongmu's novel, right, what he does is he takes these big macro forces and he dramatizes them at individual levels. So instead of sort of government policy details, we get these sort of scenes where there's people are scrolling their feeds on the bus. They're sneaking into the office bathroom to do some day trading. They're trying to avoid the Hueshik dinner. They're trying to present their best image on the dating app. They're obsessing over their finance, their sort of stock tracking app, and all this kind of thing. So these sort of everyday spaces just become the places where these pressures are getting lived out in real time. So the parallels here are very clear. The article talks about that there's too many degrees and too few jobs. And in the novel, we show this sort of endless treadmill of cram schools, aptitude tests, the rounds of interviews and applications, this sort of fantasy of I'll just learn to code. And so we see the despair of this sort of hell Choson becomes these micro humiliations, right? So missing a bus by just by a few seconds, being late for work, losing some money on the stock, the sort of hypocrisy of your boss telling you not to trade, and while he's sort of doing it himself, and this this sort of spoon hierarchy, this gold silver dirt hierarchy. This can show up in the Gangnam addresses, the sort of how much your parents can support you or back you, and this idea of the prop kid, like Chongu, right? This is a sort of slang expression for someone whose status and lifestyle is kind of propped up by their parents' property or wealth, right? They've got their parents' money behind them. And the obsession with getting into a big company still dominates as well. So everyone in the novel, they're all orbiting P Corp and M Corp, even while they're mocking them, right? They all still desperately want to be employed by these corporations, even though they know how brutal and unfulfilling and dissatisfying it would be to actually work there. And then we also have this thing called the seven give ups generation. And the seven give ups generation is a term which this is really bleak as well. So it's this idea. It describes the seven major life goals that young Korean people have given up on because of sort of economic difficulties, social pressure, and just the intense competition. And so the things they've given up on are dating, marriage, childbirth, home ownership, a stable career, personal relationships, and hope for the future. And again, just extremely bleak. And but again, we see this in the novel, right? So this is where we see these blind dates that are like, like a bank credit check, and even breaking up with your partner because you've did a poll online to see if people think your partner is too low class for you, and these kind of things, or just just avoiding the fertility lecture, or the sort of the all the news stories panicking about fertility on your social media, right? So we can see that this is a feature of the novel, right? This people have given up, or it's this idea of giving up is always there. And so these characters, they're struggling with romance, they're struggling with marriage, they're struggling with ownership, they're struggling with their jobs and their careers. And so it's like all of these traditional milestones of adulthood are increasingly out of reach for even highly qualified and intelligent young people. And so the people use these terms, and there's usually a lot of irony with them, but they really do mask a kind of despair. It is a critique of Korean society about your the society and your parents and so on. They demand this endless, constant effort, but the rewards are constantly shrinking. And why is it worth it? And the novel kind of pushes this sort of mid 2000s diagnosis into the 2020s. So class isn't just your background, it's now a sort of platformed, right? So you have these anonymous forums and dating shows and reels that literally translate status into likes, or even bans. You get banned from the app, or because you're not allowed on it because you don't have the right job email or something like that, and online judgments about your every aspect of your life. And then also finance seeps into every corner of your life, whether it's the toilet stall at work, or your lunch break, the subway or bus ride home. These all kind of become places where people are trading, or doing stuff with something with crypto or something like that, right? And the article called for reform, right? Obviously, said this isn't a good thing. And the novel shows what people are actually doing while they wait for something to change, right? And there's not much they can do. There's small things like someone makes a stand in the office, they defend one of the cleaners when a senior staff member is rude to one of the cleaners, or they actually ask for sick leave for a day, or someone smashes their phone. It's this kind of futile rejection of the system, or you try and escape to a temple stay for a couple of days. But these small acts of agency don't fix these kind of bigger sort of hell chose on seven give ups problems. They just sort of kind of puncture it for a moment. So anyway, yeah. So what we see here is that your social interface that just kind of flattens you into into metrics, and the article sort of gives us the kind of jargon and the details, but the novel gives us the scenes. And I think to get and you can sort of see how these big debates kind of trickle down into the smallest part of daily life. And then there's another fantastic article, another fantastic, a good way of thinking about this is the academic concept, the idea of Korea's neoliberal youth subject after the 1997 IMF financial crisis. And so the argument here is that young people were reshaped by spec culture. So the spec culture is this endless credential building in a hyper competitive education market. And this is often enforced by the state through civil service exams, or by families through manager mom pressure. And the novel again takes this sort of macro argument or idea and shows what that feels like on the ground. And we can map this onto the novel pretty tightly. So Yongbek, Inyoung, and Dongju all narrate their lives through scores, through their value of their stocks, their aptitude tests, their dating leagues. They don't need their boss to coerce them. It's the metrics that are doing the coercion. When Value, the influencer guy, he insists that poverty is curable if you grind right. And it's the same logic that there's sort of this self blame that it's your fault. You have to grind and you can make it out just like he did. And this sort of spec culture just runs through everything. You have this fictional, elegant brand of cram books and constant subway ads. You have the programmer boot camps that promise you can be a super successful programmer too. The endless civil service prep rituals. And so for a lot of these guys, the people in the novel, life is plotted by exams, by certificates, and this is even the sort of pivot to trading apps is just another spec, really, right? And the enforcement for this comes from above and at home. So the state still sort of says that, or pushes the idea that bureaucratic jobs are the safest investment, and parents nudge their kids away from, they want to nudge their kids into like medicine or law or something like that, and they pressure their kids to try and marry up the ladder. And so family, it's kind of like a private HR department. And you see again, you can see the kids with the sort of the family, the cushion of family money. They can cycle through more prep, right? Like if they don't get it right the first time, maybe they can take another year and pay for another year at the really fancy prep school, or they can wait for a better opening. And so they can sort of extend their adolescence as a kind of career incubation, while others are forced into double shifts or moonlighting in the convenience store, or just into a humiliating office hierarchy where you're the lowest person on the totem pole and everybody else is just kind of sort of treating you like rubbish. And we also see that in the novel as well. And then there's another thing I want to mention about this idea of the marriage race, right? And so we have this idea that partner choice is now ranked and vetted and even risk managed, right? So the novel takes that trend and stages it quite clearly. So one character makes a poll asking strangers if her boyfriend, Yongbek, who's her boyfriend, is he marriage material? And all of the people online say, no, it's ridiculous. You have a much better career than him. Why would you even think about marrying him? Even though you were childhood sweethearts, it doesn't make any sense. It's nonsense. What are you doing? And then like I said, you have this brutal blind date scene where immediately the person that he's on the date with just starts asking questions about, do you own a car? Where do you live? All this kind of stuff. And there's this little mention of like reality TV and, then where the contestants are sort of ranked by the district they live in and the job that they have. And then even just the word Gangnam, if you can say, "Oh, I live in Gangnam," it's kind of like a checkmate. It's like, yeah, okay, you win the conversation, right? You live in Gangnam, and then you have these height and job disqualifiers. And I told you already how furious I was about that, the height disqualification. Okay, yeah. And then behind all of this stuff, you have the parents performing their own audit, sort of steering their kids um, toward people with the right pedigree. And then we see this in the novel, this sort of crowdsourced intimacy with these kind of forums helping people decide or choose their relationships. And but we also see the humiliation of this, right? We see the emotional cost. Like, this is humiliating for Youngbaek, right? And that his girlfriend breaks up with him because like people online have said that he's not good enough for her. He doesn't make enough money for her. And so we sort of see how romance and housing just blur into this continuous sort of test, right? um so yeah, it's kind of grim stuff, right? So anyway, taken together, these things, right? So we have all of these kind of articles that you can find in Korean newspapers all the time, right? We see the sort of specs and class have been financialized, they've been platformized, and the families, friends, feeds, they all enforce this same kind of logic, and it's very, very difficult to escape. Let me mention one more article. I can't believe how long I've been talking. It's almost an hour. Okay, come on. I wanna get out of here. Okay. So okay, yeah. So we also you'll often find articles that talk about why so many young people in their 20s and 30s turn to investing, right? And I mainly drew on an article called "No Hope on My Salary," and this was again from the Korea Herald, and I'll post a link in the description. And so, and basically, it's because on a normal salary, even at a good company, it's still extremely difficult to buy a sole apartment. Pensions increasingly feel kind of shaky as well. And of course, you'll find 1,000 channels on YouTube and other places with influencers pushing sort of investing courses and sort of investing in property courses and all of this kind of thing. And again, the novel does a fantastic job of showing that reality, right? And this we have this idea in Korea of imjang, and it basically means this field work, right? So you go to the area you're thinking of investing in, or the apartment complex, or the redevelopment site, just to do your kind of own research and to compare properties in person. And my wife and I do this, whenever we see a new building go up in our neighborhood, or new places getting advertised, we'll go and kind of sniff around, and we see everyone else is doing this too, right? Everybody's sort of sniffing around. Is there an opportunity for me here, right? And but this is even a trend now among young people. I've had my young undergraduates are into this kind of thing, and I think you're 20 and you're already investigating this sort of stuff. But anyway, the logic here is very obvious. Your salary won't cut it, so investing kind of becomes necessary. It's kind of about just survival. And so we'll see these young people in their 20s and 30s turning to these sort of investment courses or real estate courses to try and to get ahead, right? And we see that in the novel, like with these guys doing their trading in the bathroom at work or in their lunch break, right? Or they're trying to get into crypto or something like that, right? And you have this idea that you have to get in now or you'll regret it. Jump in. Everybody else is doing it. And we also the role of influencers here is quite important, right? So we have so there are a lot of Instagram or whatever social media coaches, and in the novel Value, he sells like a premium chat room, right? So you've got the basic bog standard YouTube channel that anyone can look at, but he's also got kind of a scam going where you can sign up for the premium chat room, right? And he calls it his poverty cure. And of course, it turns out to be kind of a scam, right? He's using this. He's sort of manipulating people and profiting off their kind of desperation, right? And people are chasing these things, but they're getting manipulated. But it's understandable why they're doing it, right? Because the goal is for most people to buy an apartment in Seoul, right? This is the ultimate milestone. It's the proof that you've made it, is being able to own property, and especially, oh my goodness, being able to own property in Gangnam, right? Wouldn't that be amazing? And again, what the novel does is show the emotional cost of all this, right? So we think that investing is kind of rational. It's just a rational way of hedging your opportunities. But in the book, we see the shame of losing money, of panic selling after a bad tip, or just watching watching the markets kind of affect friendships and dating and sleep, right? You're just constantly stressing out about your stocks going up or down. There's one there's a character who takes a big loan to punt into crypto. There's pump and dump schemes that people get suckered by, and it really shows this sort of hostile environment that you have to step into if you to try and make some money investing. And it really seems extremely difficult and challenging. And you see just the human cost of it in the novel, right? And the novel does a very good job of portraying that. Okay, yeah. So there's even been things like the government recently, like earlier this year, that they're trying to tighten the rules for like multi homeowners, right? And they're doing this because they want to sort of curb speculation, right? And so yeah, there's all sorts of things like that going on in the background in the real world, right? So yeah, so we have unaffordable housing, we have this anxiety around investing, we have the influencer culture, and we see the sort of the human aspect of this in the novel. And the novel does a really good job of displaying that, right? Like just the social shame of being on the wrong side of the housing divide, right? And it's for many young Koreans, it's extremely difficult, right? Okay, what else do I want to say here? So okay, do I want to skip that, or will I talk? Oh my gosh, right? Let's talk about this. Okay, so all right, so these days, right? We have a lot, we have a ton of research about teenagers and social media, right? So the people in this novel aren't teenagers, but it is still extremely useful for us to think about here, right? So I want to talk about homophily, the imaginary audience, and multi-identity play. So homophily is a tendency to connect most strongly with people who are similar to you. So in your background, your values, your class, your school, something like that. And so this means networks often reinforce sameness, and they don't bridge to different groups. And the imaginary audience is kind of is a psychological idea that young people behave as if they're always on stage with peers watching and judging them. And of course, social media just turbocharges all of this, right? And then we have multi-identity play, which is the way that individuals, especially online, craft different versions of themselves, whether it's for romance, for professional, or whatever, right? And so we see in the novel, in a mirror for the blind, that this logic continues, right? So when these teenagers who are doing this hit their 20s and 30s, that this behavior still continues, right? And so the research often says that young people go online for connection and self-expression. And in the novel, we see a character literally crowdsource, is my man marriage material? And then we see another character posting a glossy sort of "I'm an eligible bachelor" intro to try and get a girlfriend. I think I'm losing my voice. I've been talking for so long. And so both of these characters are performing to the crowd, right? And smartphones here become what the book calls portable mirrors. Everyone is staring down at their screens. They're doom scrolling late into the night. And yeah, so And this chimes with the research, right? So the use of smartphones and social media, it's constant and it's routinized, right? And we see this in these characters. They're constantly doing it when they're commuting, when they're in the elevator, when they're on their lunch break, when they're in the toilet. They're just constantly doing it. It's constantly there in the background. And often we'll see warnings about homophily, right? So people sticking to networks just like themselves. And we see that in the novel in this idea of class sorting. So in schools and firms and districts, uh, people, people like the Gangnam people, they want to stick with other Gangnam people, right? And so you have sort of like when Chongu, his post gets no likes, and then a bunch of people just pile on and roast him. And Yongbek gets banned from this premium chat because he's complaining about he followed the advice, but he lost money, right? So he just gets kicked out. They're like, "You're a loser. We don't want you here," right? And then we also see this sort of multi-identity logic too, right? But it's scaled up to the adult world of work. You have your at work self, your investor self, your partner self, right? You have these different sort of identities that you're curating, and the imaginary audience here is the algorithm, right? It's the people out there who are clicking likes on your pictures or whatever, right? And yeah, so it's extremely we see all of these kind of things in the in the novel too, right? And so a lot of the times that kind of research is about like teenagers, but those teenagers have become the 20 something adults now, right? And those habits have just sort of followed them up into their 20s, right? And this is you're sort of flexing your salary, and you're timing the market. Your identity management is a kind of risk management, right? And so anyway, right, we're just continue these things into adulthood. We don't stop doing them when we stop being teenagers. So so the novel here is dramatizing what all of these kind of studies and newspaper articles are only really outlining, right? So the way that these things, education, careers, marriages, housing, investing, and they just all kind of collapse into an ongoing audition, right? And we can sort of see. I want to mention just a couple more things, which I think are super interesting ways of thinking about this, and then I'm definitely going to get out of here because it's been over an hour. So yeah, okay, I'm going to mention a couple of like theoretical lenses, which it's fun to look at this novel. And how long? I think I've got about 5 minutes in me left, and then we're out of here. So hold on. Okay, so I've mentioned that so like the single like this idea of Gangnam, right? Like it's like the trump card, right? If you can say you live in Gangnam, that carries real weight, right? It's really something that people will be jealous of and envious of. If you can say that you went to one of the big free universities, it's kind of the same thing. If you work for one of the really big companies, right? This is really fantastic thing, right? And we can see this idea when we think about. Oh gosh, if I skip to I think I've edited the wrong little section here. So we can think about those in terms of Pierre Bourdieu, right? And these, so if you think about these as cultural and social capital, right? So all of the cram schools, the sort of people who get to go and study abroad for a year, the English test scores that families invest in, your network and your postcodes, right? And all of these functions as kind of cultural and social capital, right? And so we see this very clearly, right? So education and address function as kind of a symbolic currency that shows where you stand, right? Also, right, the characters in A Mirror for the Blind, they're trained. They're trained, they're disciplined, and they're audited, right? So the students are drilled in the cram schools, in the hagwons. The workers are trapped in constant performance reviews. They have to go on these forced drinking rituals. Young women are nudged towards marriage and childbirth. And this is Foucault's world, right? This discipline in the classroom and the office. This is biopolitics, right? This is the state's anxious management of people, the anxious management of reproduction. So even in that brutal blind date scene, it's not about chemistry. It's about credit checks, right? It's the once you pass the credit check, then maybe we can have a baby together, right? But you've got to pass the credit check first, right? And the competition is also not just about salaries, but it's sort of about the bodies of the people involved, right? This is also how you make the most intimate decisions. And this again, this is kind of a sort of a Foucault kind of idea, right? So modern societies control people not just through laws or money or something like that, but by disciplining their bodies, disciplining their people, and managing their lives itself, right? So this is a kind of biopolitics, and we can definitely see that in Korea, right? So the education system trains students through the endless studying, right? Through the test drills, through very rigid schedules. You're disciplined to sit and study and compete. The workplaces do the same thing with very long hours, like the enforced hueshiks, all of these kind of things. The state panic over low birth rates, family as a kind of national duty, all of that stuff. That's all biopolitics, right? Governing reproduction, right? And these forces show up everywhere in A Mirror for the Blind, right? We have the cram school flashback where the teacher punishes the slow method. I've mentioned the blind date is so enough now. And then we have these sort of influencers online that just echo these government talking points about getting married and having babies. And so the competition isn't just economic, right? It's kind of written on your body, even just your the most intimate choices that you can make. That's what mentioned, just one or two more. So okay, Christopher Lash. So in the culture of narcissism, he argued, or he warned, that modern societies train people to treat the self like a performance. So endlessly polished for an audience, but always fragile underneath. And again, in the novel, this plays out through social media and credential culture. So this is where resumes, where photos, all these things are curated kind of like a brand marketing campaign. And this is just painfully vivid in the novel. And I've mentioned the examples already, but it's something that we can see very clearly in this novel. Even Youngbaek's 10-year relationship collapses because of this sort of pressure, right? That he doesn't have the right credentials, right? And so through Lash, we can kind of see the novel for the novel's world for what it is. It's not just economic competition. It's a marketplace of identities. There's this constant gaze of others, which produces anxiety, loneliness, and a very brittle sense of self-worth, right? There's a part in the novel where the Youngbaek and one of his colleagues, they leave the Hueshik, and it's nighttime, and they go out and they see the apartment towers glittering, and they say they're glittering like price tags, which is a very nice expression. And in Guy Debord's terms, this is the spectacle, right? A society where appearances matter more than realities. And again, this is just perfectly captured in the novel. So the treadmill selfie that Youngbaek takes isn't about health. It's about seeming disciplined, right? Appearing like you're the kind of person that goes on the treadmill when you finish work at nighttime. And yeah, right. And then you're kind of constantly auditioning your way through your life. Well, your car is a prop, your apartment is a prop. It's more about just projecting the aura of success, right? And in Seoul, the competition that we see in the novel isn't for resources; it's for images, and the appearance of winning can sometimes matter more than actually winning, right? Okay, second last one. So liquid modernity. So Zygmunt Bauman. So what is liquid modernity? So this is where the world where nothing feels solid, jobs are insecure, housing is unstable, and social norms keep shifting. This is a perfect frame for modern Korea, right? So young people They live in this sort of constant state of anxiety, of uncertainty. So the hot job or investment can collapse very quickly. Winners can very quickly become losers. And again, we can just see this so clearly in A Mirror for the Blind. So we have the characters chasing stocks and crypto. They're panic selling at losses. They're watching the reorganization of their company just change overnight. Their decade-long relationship is dissolving in minutes because of this market logic that's entered the dating scene, right? And so the novel very clearly shows how this liquidity, this sort of social liquidity, produces both ambition and despair. And so it just drives people to hustle even harder, but leaves them exhausted and resigned and unsure if they will ever feel secure. Okay, last one I promise, and then I'm done. So Mark Fisher, capitalist realism. So we all know the system is brutal, but it feels impossible to imagine a real alternative, right? So that's exactly the mood captured by Hell Choson in Korea. Everyone sees the competition, the exhaustion, the unfairness, yet everyone keeps grinding because escape feels unthinkable. So even sort of resistance movements like young women opting out of marriage and childbirth in the 4B movement, these often these are just kind of personal choices. They're not a systemic change. And again, that we see this kind of thing in the novel very, very clearly. So the characters, they all mock their companies. They all complain on these anonymous forums, but they still are desperate to get jobs at these companies. And they're all trying to escape you by doing the sort of day trading, but they still have to attend the humiliating company dinner. And they're all chasing the sort of Gangnam apartment, even though they know they'll never afford it. Um, and even the little moments of escape are just a kind of temporary relief before the loop you're just sucks you back in. You're just everything just starts back up again. There's no escape. And so this is very, very, very much like a Mark Fisher kind of thing to say. The critique exists everywhere, but real exit feels impossible. Okay, I've talked about this for way too long. So there's no easy solutions in this novel. It is absolutely a novel you should read. Um, if you to actually see clearly, right, to admit the futility of the competition for jobs, for spouses, for apartments, for wealth, if you actually try and see it clearly, you're risking genuine despair and alienation. But if you remain blind to this, the cycle just perpetuates, right? And it really is something that just diagnoses what's happening in Seoul extremely well. And the novel leaves you with a very unsettling truth. These illusions endure because they're livable. It is possible to live these sort of this reality. It feels unbearable, right? But it's just livable enough that no sort of mass systemic change actually happens, right? And so yeah, so this idea of blindness that Mujong talks about, it is this collective decision to play along with a rigged game because the alternative, stepping outside it, feels impossible, even though everybody knows the game is rigged. And the novel that essentially captures that paradox that sums up modern Seoul, right? Everyone sees, but few people truly want to look, right? So anyway, fantastic novel. Highly recommend it. Did you recognize these any of these pressures? Are they familiar where you are living? And please, if you've enjoyed this extremely long review, please hit the like, subscribe, or ring the bell. And have you ever felt like your phone is a portable mirror? If one metric could define you, which one would carry the most weight in your culture? And do you think freedom comes from curating yourself better for the crowd or from switching the phone off entirely? Anyway, thank you for watching. And I hope you've enjoyed this extremely long review. Take care, and I'll see you in the next review, which almost certainly won't be today. So take care. Bye bye.